So in the last year or two, I've really been researching Sasquatch and Bigfoot. And when you get down deep into the research, you discover some really crazy things about this. Like the fact that Daniel Boone, an American legend, an American hero, actually shot and killed a Bigfoot in order to save his son who was being attacked. But after I tell you this story, I'm also going to give you a full walkthrough of the Bigfoot Museum in Bailey, Colorado. So you get a chance to take a look inside a place you'll probably never see for yourself. So if you want to see this, you're going to want to sit back, you're going to want to relax, and you're going to want to check this out. And before we start this video, I'm going to ask you to hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell right next to it so you're notified of all new videos. Here we go. So for those that don't know who Daniel Boone was, Daniel Boone lived from 1734 to 1820, and he left home on a military expedition during the French and Indian War. And in 1769, Boone led an expedition that discovered a trail to the west through the Cumberland Gap. In 1775, he settled in an area he called Boonesboro in Kentucky, where he faced Indian resistance. Boone died in Femi Osage Creek, Missouri in 1820. Now, I'll leave links below so you can look into this more because I don't want to get into the history of Daniel Boone. I just want to cover this one particular really interesting story. I want to give props to a YouTuber called Hoffman Reproductions because I found this information in the links that I'm going to show you on his YouTube channel. Links to his channel will be below. Here we go. Everything in this video was pulled from the National Archives and recorded in the Lyman Draper manuscripts. Draper was a historian in the 19th century that recorded a lot of Boone's exploits through interviewing family associates and friends. And the Lyman Draper is still used by historians to this very day. So on its face, this carries quite a bit of weight. Again, it's in the National Archives. And here's the story exactly as it was recorded. Daniel Boone was a keynote speaker at an event and was asked to tell the story of shooting a large, wild man. And many people in the crowd knew of this story, but Daniel was reluctant to tell it because he was being heckled by somebody in the crowd. And he said, "Hell no, not gonna do it." After the event was over, a bunch of people that went with Boone asked him to tell the story now that the heckler was nowhere to be seen. Again, the story was recorded by Draper via a young man whom Boone relayed the story to in its entirety. In the spring, he was living in Boonesboro. Waking up on a Sunday morning, he discovered 2 Indians had stolen his horses. Boone and his son took after them and followed the tracks to the mouth of the Hinkson Creek to Cox Spring in February of 1778. The pursuit of the Indians brought them across the creek where it emptied into the Licking River, which they crossed in pursuit. The track went down the side of the Licking River to Ohio, coming so close to the Indians that they found their fire still burning. Daniel and his son quickly constructed a raft and crossed the river, climbed up the embankment only to discover signs of over 500 Indians encamped there. Daniel and his son decided to turn back. After giving up trying to get their horses back from the Indians, they started heading back to Boonesboro. And because they were pursuing the Indian horse thieves, they couldn't give away their position by hunting with their rifles. So after tracking the Indians all this time, and heading back to Boonesboro, they needed to replenish their provisions. And this is where it gets crazy. About 3 o'clock in the evening, they planned on heading about 10 miles down the river to a spring that he knew of, which came out of the foot of a hill, and it abounded in game and deer. They found the spring, they made camp. Having rained that night, the morning was a foggy morning with mist. The hill ran in the direction of their home, Boonesboro. Daniel took one side of the hill and his son took to the other side, trying to walk the same speed so that they could hear if the other one shot at any game. At about 10 o'clock in the morning, the fog cleared and he heard his son's gun fire. And then he heard another shot right after. And judging from the sound, he deduced that his son did not actually use a patch when he fired this shot, the second shot. Now in the transcript, it was recorded that Daniel understood the second shot was fired without a patch. When you use an old school muzzle loader, you have to load a patch, the gunpowder, and then the actual projectile. And if you don't, it makes a specific sound. And upon hearing that, he realized his son was shooting in haste, meaning he was probably fighting with a bear or a panther. So, he hastened to the crest of the hill, still thinking his son was probably fighting a bear or a panther, and instead he saw the largest man he had ever seen. Hastening towards his son, who was behind a tree loading his gun, and the giant man was almost upon him, moving very fast. He immediately leveled his weapon at the giant, but due to the trees, etc., he feared shooting he would miss. And remember, they're using muzzle loaders. You've got one shot, then you have to reload. So every shot counts. The giant grabbed his son by his buckskin dress and grabbed his gun, throwing it away, breaking it by the breech in the process. Then, catching his son by the neck and trousers, he lifted him over his head as easy as a man would lift a baby and slammed him on the ground. He then raised him up a second time, and for fear of shooting his son by accident, he was afraid to fire. But knowing a third slam would surely kill him if he wasn't already dead, he fired and the giant fell on top of his son. He ran up and jerked him off his son and found his son senseless and not breathing. Doing everything he could to revive his son, it seemed more than an hour, using a canteen freely to recover him. He finally breathed, and after another hour, he stood up and spoke. No broken bones were discovered at this point. Daniel then asked his son where he had aimed at the giant when he fired the two shots, and he said both times he had fired at the giant's heart. The giant was naked, and Daniel turned him over to see both shots had hit about 2 inches apart below the left nipple. He stuck his finger in the hole to discover both shots had not penetrated the giant, but had passed around and came out the back. By probing the holes with his finger, he realized the giant had no ribs, but solid bone, about 3/4 of an inch thick. He discovered this by cutting through the bone with his tomahawk. So, just to interject here real quick, how many people have said they fired at Sasquatches with no result? The thing just took the bullets and didn't seem to care whatsoever at all. It's according to this account, it's as though they have a built-in bulletproof vest. But anyways, back to the story. Daniel's own shot hit him in the left eye, which was fortunate. He was not an Indian, as he was pale yellow with long yellowish hair, and the Indians were dark with black hair. His body was covered with short hair, not very thick, and his teeth were naturally grown together, and his eyes were small, and a nose, and he had very large feet and hands. Daniel and his son stretched him out and measured him with walking sticks they had cut to discover he was about 10 foot high. They took the walking sticks back to Boonesboro and measured the sticks by the squares and found his height to be 10 foot 8 inches. Now, the credit was this story was given to me by Colonel Boone. I asked if the Indians had ever encountered such a thing, and they said yes, but the Great Spirit had killed them all, and they were gone on the Osage River. And that's the end of the story. I'll leave links to the manuscript below from the National Archives, but this is the story. Now I'm going to give you a complete walkthrough of the Bigfoot Museum in Bailey, Colorado. It was much larger than the one in West Virginia, and you might find it pretty interesting, I would imagine. I'm going to leave the original audio on so you can hear as well as see, because this place doesn't really need too much explaining, and they do a pretty good show here, so you might want to hear it for yourself.
Bigfoot here, we found two. Bigfoot here.
So as you can see, this is an extremely shaky image. The reason being that Roger Patterson were on both facts, and when they came across Patty, as we know her now, on the opposite side of Bluff Creek, his horse freaked out, as did Gimlin's horse, and we'll hear from Gimlin in a minute as he tells the story. But Patterson ended up coming off the horse. He was running towards the sasquatch and actually tripped and fell to his knee, to his elbow, and so there's a lot of shakiness. Thankfully, today we've got a stabilized image that I'm going to show you in a minute. But you can see that this is an extremely rough, shaky footage of Bigfoot. But since today,
When was the added sighting of Glen Taylor Trail in 2016?
What year? So can you read the first sentence? Both of sightings have been in the Pacific Northwest, using the U.S.'s own title of Bigfoot. This title showed up in a 1958 newspaper article telling the story of a construction worker, Jerry Crew, in Humboldt County, California. Crew had found 16-inch footprints, and the name Bigfoot was born. However, when the construction company's owner, his son revealed large, poorly crafted would prove it to be a hoax.
We haven't come across that one yet. What is this? Sasquatch.
established. I don't know the answer to that one either, but we'll find out, okay? We got a whole museum to go over.
This is tracks. This is tracks.
Okay.
Does it say anything about what we're going to be talking to?
Not yet.
Now, the second person I wanted to show you, who has something to say about this film, is Dr. Jeffrey, one of the few academics actually who come forward and believe in sasquatch and
I feel like a little kid. Well, there it is. Daniel Boone in the National Archives shoots and kills a Bigfoot and describes one that people have actually reported seeing to this day. A blonde or yellow, whatever you want to call it. At any rate, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also, leave a comment below on what video you'd like to see next, and I'll try to make it happen. I am out.